Buddy, Capt Ron here. Fearless Flight Live once again. Our weekly show for anyone who has a fear of flying, who knows and loves. Oh, maybe you don't love them. You just need them to go with you for work or something. Fear and have a fear of flying, and afraid to fly, or anybody who's just plain interested in airplanes, because we love to talk airplanes and we love to help people overcome their fear of flying. Our goal is ultimately to help you change the way you think about flying, because if you don't obsess and get hung up on all the things that your little voice wants to tell you is wrong about flying, you're no longer a fearful flyer. And with me tonight, longtime friend and fellow Captain Eric Larson. Top of the evening to you, Eric.
Hi, everybody.
And I must warn you, he's getting a little bit confident about this whole media thing, and he might come up with some tricks tonight. So I'm not responsible. This is what it reminds me when you'd fly along, especially if you were a new guy in the right seat, the captain, if he was of the appropriate mindset. When you made your first PA to the people in the back, he would say sometimes very obscene things to you while you were talking on the PA, so that hopefully you would mess up. And anyway, so Eric and I are kind of trying to recreate the nostalgia of having somebody pull your chain here while we're doing that. And with us all, of course, already with us, of course, his first officer, our favorite first officer for flight, Ace Wingman, Chief Technical Officer Dieter Staudinger, all the way from Toronto, Ontario. And he just slid in about 30 minutes ago to third base. He's been coaching baseball up there. So did you guys win?
And I'm happy to report we had a pretty epic come from behind home team. We're Eric, I don't know that you know that, but my son's team is actually the Ancaster Diamondbacks. So
cool.
So you're telling me about the uniforms.
Yeah. And and we had a pretty good come from behind win in the 7th inning tonight. So
the best kind.
Yeah.
Okay, tonight we're going to talk about we're going to give you the information again for the upcoming 201 class in Phoenix, which you can see behind me. And we have a special guest tonight, a recent elite custom coaching student, Pat Shay, who's going to share her experiences. I just flew with 2 people last week, and Pat agreed, bless her heart, to come on and let us probe her and get her experiences. And so we're going to do that. If you are live or watching the replay, be sure to like us and follow our Facebook page. It helps us get the word out to more people. We've got an active, growing group called Birds of a Feather. We'd love to have you join that if you haven't already. You can get the latest information from us, and you can connect with a group of other fearful flyers. It's getting more and more active each week, and we're finding a lot of good support by people connecting with each other. So we'd love you to do that. Make sure you introduce yourself and participate in the group by asking questions, sharing your story and experiences over there. And if you got any resources or articles or secret tricks that you employ to make your flying better, let's share it with everybody, and we can support each other as we prepare to fly out there. Okay, let's tonight. I get questions from time to time because of how much I value audio. It is a powerful way to drown out that little voice in your head up there, which is essential when you are in a position where it just won't shut up and you're trying to get off the ground or so. So I found these. I'm kind of a nerd in this area. I'm a gadget freak. I love gadgets and stuff. And this is one I'm always looking for wireless, number one, and even without the little thing that hangs under your chin or over your back there. And I found these. I paid $159 or so for a pair of Samsung's got some new ones out, and these are not them. I saw these. These are $32 on Amazon, and they are amazing. They do everything I want them to do, and they're really cool. And that little case that you see, they come in black or white, and that little case that you see in the on the slide there is also a battery. So you can plug that case into a charger when you're at home, or you can plug or just when you're carrying those in your pocket, they're charging even as you walk around from the case there. They're really cool. They're called Soundpeats, SOUNDPEATS, true wireless earbuds, 5.0 Bluetooth. They are Bluetooth, and they work really great. Did I give you that link to put on the screen, Dieter? That?
I don't believe so, but I will just find it.
Let me put it in team, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to do that real quick. Bear with me, folks, and I'll do that. Oh, come on.
But one of the things that we often talk about is the power of our brains being stimulated, both hemispheres, with audio and sound. So it's really important to have good. Oh yeah, I just got it. To have good headphones that you can rely on, and my recommendation.
Go ahead. These are noise canceling. Pardon me, Dieter.
Perfect. I was just going to say that.
Yeah, and they go in, and what I love is sometimes I wake up at the darndest hours in the middle of the night, and I will put some meditation music or words or something on, and that helps me go back to sleep. But these are flush when I get them on, so you can actually sleep on them without them pushing into your head there. So anyway, okay, I just want to pass that along to you. We're going to move on now. We're going to bring our special guest, Pat Shay, onto the scene here, and we're going to talk about her experience. Let me get my. Hey, Pat, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Ron.
And now you're wondering why you agreed to do this, probably.
I've been wondering that all day.
I want to thank you, and I want to give everybody just a heads up of what a awesome person you've been to meet and to work with. Pat has been an elite coaching student. That means that we've done coaching and we plan to flight together. And we just did this past week. It'll be a week ago tomorrow.
Right.
And we went from Phoenix to San Diego and back. So without further ado here, why don't you share with us just a little bit about your history of both Fear of Flying and then Fearless Flight, Pat, how you found us and all that.
Well, about 35 years ago, I came on vacation from Michigan to Arizona to visit my parents. I was here for a couple of weeks, and on Saturday morning, we were to fly back to Michigan, and I couldn't get on the plane. I finally got on the plane, but it took 2 or 3 over-the-counter sleeping pills to manage that. And from then on, I just couldn't even think about flying anymore.
And when you say you couldn't get on, and you took some sleeping pills, you actually went. You didn't go to the airport. You went home again, right? Went back to your folks' house.
Well, I was at my folks' house. We did go to the airport, and I put one foot in front of the other and got on the plane, but I was not happy about it.
Okay, so you pretty much had to numb out with sleeping pills, basically.
Yes.
To manage anxiety. Okay, great.
Right, and from that time on, I drove whenever I possibly could to get places. 13 hours, 8 hours, whatever it took. And I had to do that for work once in a while. So that's why I have not stepped, until I took the April 101 class, I had not stepped in an airport terminal in 35 years.
And are you comfortable giving just a little bit of background about some of the things that you've shared with me about that made it harder to go back to Detroit or the Detroit area where you were going that day?
Yeah, I was in a marriage that wasn't any good. My husband and I, we really weren't close, and we didn't talk about things. And so being on that airplane and being frightened, I didn't have anybody to talk to. And it even made it worse because the AAA agent, I'll have to say AAA, she booked all those tickets and she sat us across the aisle from each other, which even made it worse. So I was alone. And it's made it hard. Since then, I'm not married anymore. Haven't been for years, and it's just been hard to do all those things by myself.
Okay, I appreciate that, and because I want to talk a little bit more tonight, I want to go into the fact that when I say that the pain in your brain is not about the plane, I really mean that. And most people have issues in their life, and what I found in 31 years is displacing my anxiety onto an airplane is very, very common. It's easy because airplanes, there's a mystique about flying. We don't naturally know a lot about the sights, sounds, and sensations. So there's kind of like a little bit of a boogeyman thing to flying. And if you have any anxiety in anywhere in your life and you get on an airplane and you have a bad, or you have a bad experience, it's very easy for that anxiety to transfer to the airplane. And I'm not saying that that's that sums up the entirety as to what happened to you, but it's often a case. And I'm gonna, we talked on the airplane coming back about kind of a theme of going home is seems to trigger anxiety for you. So anyway, yeah. And so what you want to just tell people a couple words what we've done before we get you ready to go fly.
Yeah, I took the 101 class in April, and then I decided to take it again in May.
Uh-huh.
Then I got with you and we signed up for the elite coaching, and we had 5 coaching sessions before we took off.
Okay.
And that really helped because it helped build the relationship I have with you, so that I was able to trust, and you made me promise I'd get on the plane last week, which I did. Right. And I wouldn't have if you weren't like right there. So it helped build that relationship and helped me learn more about me.
Yeah. So when you're sitting around the house before we even started the first coaching session, where would you put your anxiety 1 to 10 when you thought about flying?
Oh, it was right up there, 9 or 10. Yeah.
Okay. And then when we got ready to fly, that actually on that last Wednesday when we went to the airport, where would you put it?
Well, when I was waiting for you, because it was hard to find a parking spot, it was right up there about 8 or 9.
Okay.
And,
so it was pretty high. Yeah.
Yeah. Once we started doing things like you helped me learn how to do the boarding pass, and when we were in the boarding, you helped me get through security. And when we were in the boarding area, I asked a whole lot of questions, and that helped a lot. But my anxiety was still probably like a 6 or a 7.
Okay. And for you, it seems to be more important to do some of the other things. One, because you hadn't flown in 35 years. So just the mechanics of being around an airport and what went on seemed appropriate. And then the other thing is I think that would it be fair to describe you as a more structured, organized person? You don't like surprises so much. You like to kind of know what's coming down the pike.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
And so that makes it something like that. And I haven't talked much about personality and how it lends itself to anxiety, but that's a real important thing for some people. And so you want to keep the surprises. And as human beings, we don't like uncertainty. Okay, so anytime you've got anxiety already going on, you've got that issue with uncertainty stuff. So that was part of what we talked about. We talked about the process and all that. What were some of the questions that we addressed, or the issues we addressed in coaching that you wanted to do before you actually got on the airplane?
Wow, that's a hard question. Okay. I wasn't afraid. I told you several times I wasn't afraid of what the plane was going to do. Uh-huh. And I still to this moment don't think I'm afraid of the actual plane ride itself. What I'm afraid of is how I'm going to react when I'm on that plane. Am I going to have a meltdown? Am I going to get sick? Am I going to make an embarrassment out of myself in front of a lot of people?
Yeah. So you weren't worried about the airworthiness of the airplane. You were worried about the Pat worthiness.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
And part of it was you shared. Part of it was you had this fear that you might get sick to your stomach on there. And did that pan out, or how was that an issue when we flew?
On the way over, things were fine. I didn't know what to expect on the way over. I had the pressure in my head that we talked about, and but it wasn't that uncomfortable. It was just different. And no, I didn't get sick on the way over. Actually, my anxiety once we took off, my anxiety went down to about a 4, and then it was probably close to less than 1 when we landed. And I was excited. I bought the hat and had to have a souvenir from San Diego. It was more on the...
I couldn't find the picture of you in the hat that we took. So. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have it real handy right now, but, I don't know if that answered all your question. It was the flight on the way back that was difficult.
Okay. And so going over, you felt pretty anxious waiting until we met. And how would you describe the anxiety from the time we met when it was kind of high and we went to the ticket counter, we got a boarding pass to early board, and then went through the security and all that. When at the time we got to where we actually boarded the airplane, what would you say it was, 1 to 10?
It was about when we actually boarded the airplane from here to San Diego, it was probably about a 5 or 6.
Okay. So it just kind of steadily moved down, and what would you say was the peak anxiety? Not necessarily the highest, but when was it through the sitting in the boarding area, getting on board the airplane until they closed the door? What would you say that the highest your anxiety was, and how was that time?
I'd say it was probably a 6, but then you made it so I could talk to the pilots. Okay. And actually one of the pilots sitting in the right-hand seat, got up and let me sit in his seat and took a picture, and that made a lot of difference on that flight. It didn't make as much difference on the flight coming home.
Okay, and we'll talk about that. We're going to spend some time on the return flight, because I think that has a lot to offer people out there. So paraphrasing you, meeting the pilots was a big deal.
It
was a noticeable thing, and that's why I tell everybody you really want to do that. And I encourage you to ask them if they could take a picture of you sitting in the seat or something like that. If they're busy and stuff, they'll be honest with you. They'll tell you they don't have time or anything like that. But most of the folks are really willing to accommodate you. And it's not like everybody in the back of the airplane wants to come up there and do that.
Right, and they didn't seem to be in a hurry at all, so they took time.
Yeah, so that's really cool. Let me see. I got a couple other things I want. So when we taxied out towards the runway, we did it stay around a 4 or 5, 6 in there, or did it climb a little bit?
It stayed about a 5 or a 6 until we actually got in the air and we were in there. I mean, you were pointing out things that I could see out the window. I wanted to sit next to the window so I could see things. Okay. And I'd ask a question now and then, and I don't even remember what those were. I guess I was talking more about how I was physically feeling, which was the head pressure. And you were explaining probably what that came about. And once I started understanding more and was able to share that with you, that helped.
Yeah. So you seem to have a real sensitivity to sensations. And I believe that you're probably in the majority of people. If it's not physical things like feeling my sinuses and the pressure in my middle ear and things like that, it's more about the sensations of the airplane. But I really think that most people, the sensations are what triggers them there. And we talked that you might actually have smaller sinus openings or whatever. And when we close the door and they start up the engines, we pressurize the airplane very, very slightly before we take off, so that it seals the door. Okay, the door won't open, but we put it. If you don't pressurize that little seal around the door, it'll rattle a little bit, and we just don't like it rattling while we're taxiing out down the runway. So that's the first time when the pilots start the engines, you may notice, because of your hypersensitivity and hyper-awareness, you may notice a little pressure bump on your ear, because it takes the cabin and lowers it a little bit. It inflates the cabin back there. So those are good things to notice. But the key here, I think, is you took your anxiety through coaching and doing some homework down from in the upper reaches up the 8, 9, 10 category, and you got it down to around a 5 or so. And that's key, because you're going to feel some fluctuations. You're going to feel some triggers when you go flying. And if you can get that down around the midpoint there, 4, 5, or 6, now you've got some wiggle room when you get spiked. If you get on the airplane and you're at a 9 or you're at a 10, you got nowhere to go when your anxiety spikes. And I look at my 1 to 10 scale kind of like a Richter scale. So a 1 to go from a 1 to a 2, it's 10 times more anxiety for you. So when you go from a 2 to from a 1 to a 3, it's 30 times more anxious, or 20 times, whatever the math works out there. Okay. So anyway.
Yeah. And I can just say that when I went to that first 101 class, I stepped into the terminal and the voice in my head said, Pat, you can't do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we came a long way with the coaching.
Okay. All right. So when they pushed the power up on the runway and we took off, was it still in the 4 or 5, range, or did it go up a little bit?
It probably did. It didn't go up enough. I was more curious as to what was going to happen. I mean, I've been on planes before. It's not the first time I've ever been on an airplane. It's just the first time in 35 years.
Right.
So I kind of think it's neat, to take off and to feel that power. And so
I think you commented, you remembered part of what you loved about flying when we got to
yeah, it's really, I did once upon a time when I was probably a little girl, loved flying, but yeah.
And one of the things I wrote down, one of the notes I made was the notion of going to something exciting. So while you had anxiety over flying, you were still excited about the possibilities of getting out of that little prison in your mind that you'd been.
Yeah. And, I'd never been to San Diego before, even though I was only going to see the airport. But everything that we did was new to me. And that was exciting.
Yeah. And I think that speaks a lot to the way you prepared yourself and everything like that. Okay. So we sat on the ground there. We talked a little bit. Compare your feelings, your level of anxiety, 1 to 10, as we anticipated getting on the airplane going back to Phoenix. Just that part of the terminal. We landed. You were feeling really good, really comfortable. We had to kill, I think, an hour and a half or something like that, and then we're getting ready to board. Anything noteworthy about that part?
No, I was ready to go.
Yeah. Okay. And so now we get so that kind of says the same thing about taxi, closing the door, taxi, takeoff. No real issues with that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And was that, when you look back on that, were you a little bit surprised about that? That, going from not flying 35 years thinking, oh man, I don't think I can do this. Because as we did the coaching in the last month, every week when we check in and stuff like that, you would say, I had some real bummer thoughts this week and all that. Right. Were you surprised that, you got that you were as relaxed as you were?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't expect to be that.
Now, on the return flight, okay, and this is where I think it's going to be interesting for a lot of people out there. So as we were climbing out there, that's when I remember you talking to me a little bit about that. Can you relate to everybody what happened to you or what you started to notice
during the flight?
Mm-hmm.
It was about halfway.
Our return trip to Phoenix.
Right. It was about halfway through the flight, and I remember trying to get I had some music downloaded on my phone and it wouldn't work. And I don't really think that had anything to do with it. Maybe it just frustrated me a little bit and heightened my frustration. But then it was like a couple minutes later, all of a sudden I felt this twinge. And I said to myself, boy, what does that mean? And am I going to be sick? I mean, I wasn't sick on the flight over. Is everything going to be okay? And then I started worrying. And then I got extremely disappointed with myself, and I got angry with myself because the flight back was supposed to be perfect.
Yeah.
That was
because the one down had been so perfect, right?
Right. That one was, and the flight back was supposed to be even easier.
Yeah, and I want to cut to the quick, and I don't want you to give you any more opportunities to beat up on yourself than you already take. And
okay.
This is a thing that I would love people out there tonight that might be listening to you and I talk that to remember. We are so critical of ourselves, and I can't tell you a number of people I fly with, and I'll point out little successes that they do, and they'll minimize them. And I do that myself. I'm not bragging that I'm all over that. We're so self-critical sometimes, and you would establish for yourself, because what we'll share with the group. What's your big goal to fly? You got a trip that you'd like to make?
Yeah, I want to fly to Vancouver and take the train across Canada.
Now, I think that's funny, Most people take the train to avoid flying. You want to get on an airplane so you can go take a train. But obviously,
I learned to like trains when I couldn't fly.
And it's a special trip because it's very famous in North America, that going through the Canadian Rockies and all
Right.
that. It's a great trip and all that. But it's just kind of funny because usually people are taking the train so they can avoid flying, and you're trying to get on an airplane so you can fly up and take the train, which is
Well, and the second part of the goal is if I can start traveling, if I can start flying, then I can start going on maybe some planned, coordinated trips with tour guides and other people, and then I can maybe meet some people that I can fly other places with.
And we'll just touch on that because that was another big thing that came up in the coaching is that you're a quiet person. You take care of your mom, and so you've had a lot of obligations, and you haven't had a big circle of friends. And for you, that's one of the things is you don't have anybody that you'd really be able to share this with. So
Right.
One of the things is I threatened to hook you up with, not hook you up. That's not a good term. To connect you with some other fearful flyers. And I'm hoping birds of a feather that's one of the things that maybe some people will hit upon. Not necessarily that two people would meet that would want to travel together, but maybe people will know other people in the area and things like that. So, or be planning to trip their themselves and would become kind of a little travel group as well. So anyway,
Right.
so do you have any? Are you glad that you did it?
I have to be glad that I did it.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah, I do have to because I want to be glad that I did it. It had unintended consequences in the fact that, I know I wrote you some thoughts afterwards that evening after I recovered from being so tired from being so anxious all day.
Yeah.
But it isn't about the plane. And I found out that it's not about the plane. You sat next to me and you said, that plane got you to San Diego and that plane's getting you back. Now, don't be angry at the plane. And that's true. I was doing fine being angry with myself. But it was important to know that it isn't about my fear of flying. It's more about me in that situation and things that I have to think about. But I've been beating myself up pretty good for the last few days.
Yeah, and so we're gonna continue to talk and try and help you work on that. And when it shows up in flying, we'll talk about that. But it really is a celebration of your courage, and I really want you to encourage you to pat yourself on the back. Most people do not experience such a major change in their thinking and their behavior as you will or you have as a result of doing this. It's really hard to change our belief system and our behavior, which is a sub part of that. And one of the things that I enjoy thoroughly about working with people who are afraid to fly is I get to see that. I get to see often a microcosm of this person blossoming into a behavior style, a changed way of thinking that really, really does free them up from the prisons of their minds that they've been stuck in out there. So I want to compliment you, Pat, and both for the courage to step up and learn how to overcome this, and for coming on tonight and going deeper than we've done with many other people there. So way to go, pat yourself in the back, and you're stuck with me because we'll be connected now.
Okay, that's good because it's it's baby steps, and my expectations were giant steps, and if I needed to be more realistic. But I wanted it so bad. I wanted the magic wand, the Capt Ron magic wand. Get on the plane to San Diego, come back, and you're fixed.
Well, if you find it, let me know because I didn't know I had one. So anyway, all right. Well, thanks, Pat. We're gonna let you go. I promised Eric that he could come on and harass me or come on with words of wisdom, whatever it is that he's got in store there.
All right.
We'll have Dieter check in if there's any comments that we need to address right there. So Eric, what do you want?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, once in a while I see funny current events and the aviation stuff in the paper or the electronic media, and I just can't resist looking at them. And one of the ones today that I thought I'd review, Ron pointed out, and we get questions about this all the time. What happens if people open the door in flight? What will happen to everybody? Will they get sucked out? And we've reviewed that with the pressurization system on the airplanes before, that there's well over 10,000 pounds of closing force on the door, which has to be pulled into the cabin before it can go out. So it cannot be opened in cruise. But it seems like once in a while, people get up taxiing and they have to use the bathroom. So my first serious card is, do not use the aircraft lav while the airplane is taxiing. And this is the serious part. If the flight attendants call the pilots will have to stop the airplane while you're up. They can't move it. You'll hold it up for everybody, and the ground controllers will scream and yell at the pilots if you get up to use the lav. Now, this one poor fellow this week, the thing that seems to be common, got up and he mistook one of the aircraft entry doors for the lav, which he did successfully open on the ground. And you can do that if you have to go to the bathroom really badly and you have a lot of strength, you can do that on the ground. However, you will find that if you open one of the aircraft entry doors on the ground to use the bathroom, it will be really, really loud and hard to concentrate. You may be stricken with bashful bladder syndrome and not be able to go to the bathroom anyway. Once you've done that, once you've gone over that hurdle, I will personally guarantee you the airline will be really mad at you. So you don't want to do that. Also, some of the repercussions are the ground is hard and it's a long ways down. You wouldn't want to slip and go out the door just when you open it to go to the bathroom. Also, the slide will probably deploy when you open the door, and if you urinate on the slide as well as opening the door, then the airline will be really, really mad at you. After all that has happened, I will personally guarantee you the flight will be late and it will be your fault. So in closing, if you open the aircraft lab door and it looks like a huge, expansive view with lots of scenery that is airport themed, that's not the right door. Close that door immediately. You open the wrong door. Don't go out that door. And that's your tip of the week.
God knows we needed that wisdom. Okay, Dieter, anybody that's hanging on with a question or anything there? While you're coming on there, we'll talk about the Clear for Takeoff 201 class coming up on July 20th.
So there is before you get rolling on that, because the question actually has to do with what Eric was talking about. So
oh, you're kidding me.
It has to do with the fact that that person, I forgot the name, but the person just wanted to know if there is no, I mean, first of all, it seems almost inconceivable to mix up the door to the lavatories with a bona fide airplane door. So that, I have no idea what needs to happen that you make that mistake in the first place.
Well, it's rare. We could tell that because it only happens once every 100,000 years or something. But if you're severely anxious enough, that's what happens. So.
And so the question that the person had, is it really that easy for anybody who has no clue about how airplane doors even work to just walk up there and open it while the plane is on the ground? Is it really that simple?
No, it wouldn't be that easy. It'd take a murderous pull to get that thing open on the ground. But
Eric, isn't the Boeing still has a manual door, right? The 73. Okay, right. But doesn't the 57 and the Airbus products, don't they have an electric assist?
The bus, yes, electric. Some of the 75 manual, some electric assist. But depending on how you were configuring the aircraft pressurization wise, you might not have built up that initial pressure bump. So
right, yeah.
Might be able to
for sure. If they do a single engine taxi, you probably don't have it.
Single taxi or a high altitude takeoff or that kind of thing, and they haven't configured for that yet, you might be able to overcome it, but it wouldn't be that easy. It would take a murderous pull to get it.
And the other thing that I think is worth mentioning, what's more likely to happen is the door is going to come in, but they're not going to get it anywhere near the open position, right? I mean, it's basically going to come in first as it needs to before they can swing it out. So the chance of somebody getting the thing completely open is really, really slim.
But didn't those slides deploy though? Like,
Well,
like
yeah,
they did,
that's
right?
that's the riskiest part.
And that's
is
what
before you ever get the
caused, like,
door
the
open,
major
you're going to
delay.
be that slide pops open. It's going to press you on the other wall and may hurt you. So yeah. Plus, like the 7-3, you got flight attendants sitting right by the door. I mean, this was more in humor tonight, and wasn't it a Pakistani airline that this happened on?
It was, but it seems like, not to blame them, it looked like a nice new airplane, but it seems like once every 2 or 3 months, somebody mistakes a lab door for an entry door. And as Dieter brought up, yeah, there's kind of a difference. It's like it's mistaking your car door for a bank vault door. They're a little bit different presentation. But
or your wife for a lampshade, as that old book title is.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Okay.
So can I do one more very short one? I'll keep this one under 60 seconds.
Okay. You promised me that we wouldn't. All
right.
right.
My other favorite one, and because our viewers are all over this stuff, they've probably seen it. But I saw this woman on the mainstream media, and I'm sure you can pick it up on YouTube if you typed in the search engine something about woman headstand in flight. So it looked like domestic U.S. somewhere, going from point A to point B, and a woman was doing pretty advanced yoga exercises in the seat. And the conclusion of the yoga exercises, he turned around and was doing headstands in the seat of the airplane. And of course, a passenger across the aisle was filming this whole thing. And I would like to urge our viewers not to be doing the headstands in the seat of the airplane. There are very few advantages to that. I'm not a doctor, but I would bet my life she has no risk of deep vein thrombosis in flight, DVT, and we can talk about that sometime. The other minuscule advantage would be if she hit turbulence right then, she would be the only one to land on the ceiling of the airplane with her feet. However, some fraction of a second later, she would land on her head and her neck back in the seat, and the advantage of hitting the ceiling with her feet would be negated. So finally, one of the flight attendants, I'm sure they were shrieking with laughter and unable to suck it up, but they made the junior one go up there and tell her to knock it off. And she was very cooperative, sat back down, put her seatbelt on. And the final really funny part about it is, in Ron and I's day, we would have said buff or ripped, and now they say Jack. There was a real solid young guy in his 20s, slumped and sleeping over against the window, out cold to the point where he appeared to be dead, and did not move or had no awareness during any of the yoga routine that any of this was going on. And the passenger who filmed it showed it to him, and he never moves the whole time. He did get up and get off the plane under his own power, but he couldn't believe it. The guy showed him the film. He never moves the whole time during the yoga routine, and it's. If you're really, really bored, pull out on YouTube because it's really funny.
So we wish that for all of our fearful flyers out here, that you can be so zoned out that you can sleep the entire time there. So whatever.
I'm thinking neither one of those people are our clients.
Okay. All right. So one more quick pitch for the 201 class. If you're going to be in Phoenix anywhere near the 20th, please, and you're interested in flying, come down and join us on the class. We've got the link will be posted in the show notes afterwards. And if you got any questions, send them to us. Until next week, thanks, Dieter. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Pat, again for joining us. This has been Fearless Flight Live, and I'm Capt Ron. We'll see you again next week. Have a good week, folks.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, guys.